From the crossroads of the Ozarks, this is PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, or am I Marie Curie? I don't know. I'm someone.
I'm Vladimir Zelensky.
Oh, welcome, Vice President Zelensky.
Ribbit.
If you're listening to this and wondering where have their brains gone, well, it's just been in the news.
People have been asking that for years.
Well, they really have for, 20 years. But there are a lot of things going on in the world, and sadly, not everyone can remember who's in charge of what office or who's in charge of what country.
Yes. I don't want to mock President Biden. He is the president of our country. We are commanded to pray for our leaders.
And I do pray for him. I do, and I'm sure many of you do as well.
Yeah.
It's just that someone needs to be kind and help him to step aside.
That would be Dr. Jill.
Yeah, well,
she should not have pushed him to run in 2020.
No, she shouldn't have. But that's politics.
It is, and sadly, the story is not President Biden's cognitive decline. We've been watching that for years. We saw it in 2020, and it was pretty evident when they would not let him out on the campaign trail, just kept him and used the pandemic as the excuse. That they were trying to conceal the fact that Joe Biden is not as sharp as he was, even when he was vice president under President Obama. So it was evident, this has been evident. The big story is that the media is pretending to be surprised. They are pretending that they didn't notice, that they were lied to, and that they don't have the cognitive abilities themselves to tell when people are lying.
Yes, I am aware of that. I know many of you are aware of that. What surprises me is that we have front runners in the Hollywood/Washington elite that are now calling for him to step aside. And my understanding is that former President Obama was consulted about this before George Clooney announced that President Biden should be
There was an
retired.
Op-ed published by the New York Times this week, written by George Clooney, who is an A-list actor, one of the preeminent A-list actors.
And often suggested as a political candidate. Yeah,
and also suggested as a possible CIA asset, although I don't have any evidence to that effect. I've seen that rumor.
No, I'm saying future candidate. There are many who say he will run for something.
He's got the look. He's got the gravitas. Certainly Ronald Reagan showed that it could be done. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it happen. But remember, it was just 3 weeks ago, he was the host of that big fundraiser that generated $28 million for President Biden's campaign just 3 weeks ago.
Yes, I know. And I'm still seeing ads on YouTube for where President Obama says, for $5, you can change the course of the future or whatever.
Right, yeah.
I'm thinking, do you mean for Biden, or do you have another idea? What are you saying here? Because I never watched the whole ad.
Sure.
I just, 5 seconds rolls.
5 seconds, click. Yeah, move on. Well, I don't know. And there are legal issues here regarding how the campaign money that's been raised by the Biden.
I know, that's what I nearly said too.
Yeah, the Biden-Harris campaign can be transferred to another candidate.
I thought the VP was Trump. You know what's weird? Seriously.
And that he's not qualified to be vice president.
I know. Yeah. Seriously, there's so many things. And we could just go on and on, but we won't. We're going to remind you to download our app. The app is absolutely free. Yes, free, and also contains some very nice features. First of all, the conversation that we just had about the politics. Boy, I'll tell you what, conversations that I had back in 2021 following the last election got some episodes of View from the Bunker. One episode deleted because I raised questions. Yeah. So that may happen at some point in the future. So the app guarantees that we don't get canceled. You can bypass the gatekeepers and have the content come directly from the company, the Christian company. Subsplash.
That's developed the app, and they will bring it right to your smartphone or tablet. But also the community there. There's a messaging function. You look when you open the app, there's two little talk balloons, top right corner, and you click on that, join the group, and exchange messages, prayer requests. You can ask questions directly of Sharon and me, and it's all self-contained. It's not out there online someplace for the bots to troll and then target.
Amen to that. And by the way, we will be answering one of your questions at the end of this study, if we can remember to do that.
Yes, I actually did flag a question, so I'm glad you reminded me. So I will bring that up. But the bottom line here is that you can get it at gilberthouse.org/app or pidradio.com/app.
Well, you were saying that it's possible something said in the past. Well, many of you may have noticed that on a certain social media platform that we all use, Facebook, that the last week or so, there was a 24 to 48 hour period where suddenly everybody was getting warned. Everybody.
Yeah.
This post is removed. These 5 comments were removed. These 10 comments were removed. This happened back, and some of them were from in the past.
Oh, yeah.
And it was out of nowhere, but it happened at the same time that a new regulation had been announced by the Zuckerberg camp, saying that they were now going to police any anti-Zion material, anyone who is anti-Semitic and uses the term Zionist.
Right.
Which, look, I think free speech should be free speech.
Right.
Period. You may not agree with it, and you're welcome to ignore it. But you should be able to say something that is not threatening violence against someone.
And we should all be given the freedom. That's what the First Amendment was intended, to give us all the freedom to say any stupid thing that we want to say, as long as we're willing to allow others to respond in kind.
I know.
Again, as long as we're not threatening violence against anyone else or soliciting for violence, then it should be allowed.
And it's based on the free speech that was considered sacred back in the mother country of England.
Right.
Yet Prince Harry is on the record as saying he does not understand our First Amendment in our Constitution. He thinks it's quote unquote bonkers.
Well, that is not an uncommon sentiment among the left today. The First Amendment has gone way too far, they say, because free speech is just dangerous.
Well, I would say to him, look, if you want to criticize free speech in England, fine.
Yeah.
That's where you're from. But you shouldn't be doing that anyway because you're a royal. But if you want to say, look, I'm not going to be a royal anymore, I'm outside that camp, I get to do whatever I want to do, fine. But leave us alone. You know nothing about the Constitution, and you're not a citizen.
Exactly.
Shut up.
If you want to comment, give up your title.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, he'll never do that.
No, So then refer back to point number 1. Shut up. Shut up, Harry. Well,
and get off those committees that, places like the Aspen Institute
that are trying
to remove our rights for free speech.
Exactly. And let me say, just to be clear, in case some of you are wondering, the House resolution that passed a couple of months ago trying to criminalize any criticism of Israel as anti-Zionist, anti-Semitism, that is also wrong. If you want to say something stupid about the people of Israel and about Jews in general, you should have, under the First Amendment to the Constitution, the right to say so.
Exactly. When you curtail speech that is differing in opinion from yourself, that's not free speech anymore.
Exactly.
I mean, imagine if the Lord had created, all of us, and we had to say whatever he chose for us to say.
No free will.
That means free will is gone. Exactly. Well, free speech is part of free will.
Yeah. And the progressives, so-called progressives, because they're actually regressive, they love to weaponize language, who argue that the First Amendment has gone too far, assume that they'll always and only be the ones to decide who gets to say what. When the prospect of Donald Trump returning to the White House has got them all freaked out, because they suddenly realize, hey, wait a minute, if we give Trump the power that we want, then that would be bad. Well, no president, no government should have the power that they want to have for themselves.
Exactly. And let's just be clear that there is not a particular side that is guilty of trying to remove free speech. Both sides of the aisle have tried to play with our free speech abilities.
Right.
Just look at the Patriot Act.
Yes, absolutely. And we were very vocal about that when we started.
Yeah, we were.
PID
but we
Radio
didn't get canceled. I mean, we got to say whatever we chose to back then.
Social media wasn't quite as big a thing back then.
No, we were one of the few shows that were doing that kind of thing. But hey, let's just talk about something that's connected.
Oh.
But long time ago.
In a galaxy far, far away?
Well, no, actually here.
Oh, okay.
Right here on this planet. And speaking of Israel, it has to do with that. You and I watched, at least I watched all of it, the movie Lawrence of Arabia yesterday.
Ah, yes.
If you've never seen it, it's a classic. And because our current
attention
spans have shortened so much. This back in the 19th century when political candidates would have a debate, they would talk for hours and hours and hours. Sometimes it would start in the morning and would go till evening. That was public entertainment at the time in many ways. So that was kind of what they had. And they'd go to Hyde Park or whatever, Speaker's Corner, and they would listen to a preacher or some sort of person who just doesn't like the king. Anybody got to stand there, and you could talk for as long as people would allow you to speak. But that has changed. Now, you and I watched Lawrence of Arabia, and against like 3 hours, 3.5 hours and
45
long.
minutes, yeah.
It's nearly 4 hours long. And it's not The Lord of the Rings, which is one that's got constant action and character development and lots of things taking place that keep you focused. Lawrence of Arabia has entire 5-minute scenes that are nothing but men on camels. 2 men on camels riding through the desert.
The scene where Sharif Ali, played by Omar Sharif, first appears, emerging from a mirage.
It's actually beautiful.
Beautifully done. In fact, we looked it up and found that the lens that was used for that particular shot was only used at one time, developed specifically by Panavision for that shot, never used again.
It's the most amazing thing. It would be done by CGI today, but it was beautiful to watch. And that is worth it. And
that scene, though, was a good 4 or 5 minutes long of him coming out of the desert and Peter O'Toole just kind of standing there. Are we seeing a guy for real? Is that...
That actually may have been a little shorter. Might have benefited from slightly less, but you can understand when they'd done this massive lens just for the scene, they wanted to make the most out of it.
Yeah.
However, watching 5 minutes of 2 men on camels through the desert, I understood that David Lean the director was trying to make the point about the boredom, how taxing it would be on your physical self and your mental self to be out in the middle of nothing, with only sand and some mountains off in the distance, with just a camel that's not that comfortable to ride beneath you, and very little water.
Yeah.
Only what you could carry, unless they could make it to the next well. That was his point. But it could have been made in a 2.5-hour movie, or even a 2-hour movie. And there were big scenes, but they all looked alike to me. But here's why I mention it.
Yes.
Now that I bored you with 5 minutes of talking about a nearly 4-hour movie.
Just to illustrate the length of the movie.
Yeah.
The commentary.
That must be long. Lawrence of Arabia, T.E. Lawrence, was a fascinating individual. He was an archaeologist. He was sponsored by the Palestine Exploration Fund. And if you're a Red Wing Saga reader, you know what I'm talking about, which means that he was on the government payroll and a spy. PEF often sent archaeologists, quote unquote, into the field with another mission. So he was out there discovering he traveled with Woolley.
Leonard Woolley. Who found the city of Ur.
He did. So Lawrence really, really enjoyed the archaeology part. He was genius with languages. He was very good about adapting to harsh conditions. And he ended up being sent to speak with the Arabs, in particular, to try to form an Arab coalition to assist Great Britain against the Ottomans.
The Ottoman Empire was allied with Germany and Austria-Hungary in World War I. The Brits had holdings in Egypt from the time of the digging of the Suez Canal.
Yes.
And so they were well positioned there to send agents into Arabia to work with the Arabs who'd been chafing under Turkish rule for a long time, even though they were all, for the most part, Sunni Muslims. They had different strains of Sunni Islam. In fact, I was reading a book by Dr. Timothy Furnish some months back called The Coin of the Realm, but that's kind of a play on words. Tim loves to play with language. Coin, as in COINTEL. Yeah. And counterinsurgency also. It was about the counterinsurgency tactics used by the Ottomans during their long reign in the Near East and Mesopotamia. The Arabs had a different strain of Islam, even though they were both Sunnis. Under that broad description, there are many flavors. The Turks were more mystical, more Sufist than Salafist. Salafists were more, or are more fundamentalist. Let's hold to the teachings, no new innovations. But you've also got an ethnic component there where the Arabs and the Turks don't really like each other,
right? In
part because of the long reign of the Ottomans over Arabia.
And you also have tribal factions, even within all of that, that are guarding their little territory, which centers around their well at that time.
Right. So loyalties are to family and clan first, tribe second. Nationalist identity was that's really a Western idea that doesn't apply even today in the Middle East, except for Israel. So the English wanted to exploit the Arab resentment of the Turks in World War I and used men like T.E. Lawrence, Gertrude Bell, who was another archaeologist working for the PEF, who was spent most of her life exploring in the Middle East and mapping it out, but also another fellow by the name of Jack Philby.
I was going to get to Philby because he also was working with the Arabs.
Right.
And I know that you have done a lot of reading on Philby. I've been doing some reading, and my reading was because I was studying the Cambridge Five, the spies there in the 30s and 40s. Philby was Kim Philby, who's one of the Cambridge Five spies. He was Kim Philby's dad.
Right. Kim was a communist. He was a dual agent for the Soviets. His father was not a communist, but
he loved the Germans.
He did. He was a fascist, and Kim Philby's resentment about the way he was treated by his father, which was not good. Jack Philby, also known as St. John Philby, but Jack sort of his nickname.
And Kim wasn't his son's name; it was a nickname.
Yeah,
and it was taken from the Jungle Book.
Right. Jack Philby was a bureaucrat in India, which was controlled by the Brits in the late 19th century and early 20th century. Kim and his mother, Kim was born in India. Jack apparently was bisexual and engaged in some peccadillos, which got him basically dead-ended his career with the foreign service in India. But he showed an aptitude for language and a real love for the intrigue that came with the spy game. And so he was found himself somehow working for MI6, but he'd packed up Kim and his mother, sent him back to England. So Kim really grew up without a father and resented that. And so he went the other direction, became a communist. His first mission essentially was the Soviets detaching Kim to spy on his dad.
Yes.
Because the Soviets wanted to make inroads with the Arabs.
In fact, it's thought that's why he was approached.
Yeah.
And I will say this, that partner choice in sexual relations, I'll just put it that way, was considered the reason why you would choose a person for the intelligence services. In fact,
yes.
According to The Secret War Against the Jews by John Loftus and
Mark Ahrens.
Thank you. Sexual preference, that it was preferred that you be either homosexual or bisexual. And frankly, it was because you could then blackmail more people.
Right. You can lure a foreign diplomat into a compromising position and then exploit that for for gain.
Right. The fact is today, if that were taking place today, it would probably, be heralded as, hey, look how brave and, they are. This was in the very early 20th century through the mid 20th century, at a time when it was still illegal in most countries, especially in the Middle East. It's still illegal there, except for in Israel.
Yes. Yeah. It was, but it was contrary to what you might think. Again, it was actually opened doors for Jack Philby in the intelligence services.
It did.
And when he was detached on what would have been a minor mission to an Arab sheikh of the House of Saud named Abdul Aziz, we now know him as Ibn Saud, the first king of Saudi Arabia. That's why that country now has that name. It's for the House of Saud. He was basically sent by British intelligence to get him to quit attacking the Arab tribes that had been brought together by T.E. Lawrence.
Yes.
To fight against the Ottomans. Well, Abdulaziz, who was a follower of Wahhabist Islam, which is that is very fundamental. You probably would only find today the Islamic State being more fundamentalist than Wahhabists. But compared to other Sunni Muslims in Arabia at the time, they were pretty radical. They wanted to bring Islam back to its 7th century roots. And so they were raiding other Arab tribes, which was a nuisance to the Brits, who wanted to ally the Arab tribes against the Ottomans. And they did stir them up, the Great Arab Revolt. But Jack Philby, St. John Philby, found that he really liked the perks that came with being a friend of the Sheikh Abdulaziz, later King Ibn Saud, because although technically certain sexual practices are illegal under Islam, it's not, if you're part of the court of the Sheikh, it's not really enforced. So he went native. And Jack Philby, began sharing British intel with Abdulaziz that allowed him to defeat his rivals for control of the Arabian Peninsula.
Now, what I was trying to look up while you were talking was that T.E. Lawrence had been sent to Faisal.
Yes.
And this isn't the King Faisal that was later king of Saudi Arabia. His name was also Faisal.
No, different Faisal. That Faisal was the son of Ibn Saud.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So
that was confusing me.
The reason we bring this up is that Ibn Saud he bought into the idea of a pan-Arab movement. He just saw himself as the leader of all Arabs, bringing together the tribes, which is kind of what Muhammad managed to accomplish back in the 7th century.
Okay, sorry about that. I have to jump in before I forget. King Faisal in the Lawrence saga is Faisal I of Iraq.
Right.
So that is what confused me.
Popular name, like Muhammad, like Abdullah. You find it coming up a lot. Abdulaziz, King Ibn Saud, saw himself as one who would unite the tribes under his rule, unlike Sharif Hussein, who was made king sort of by the French after World War I, the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Hussein in Damascus wanted to become the king, and when the French said, no, we're not going to have a kingdom here, they rebelled, and the French sent in the military and kicked him out and deposed him. But Abdulaziz Ibn Saud in Arabia was kind of beyond their reach. That's a really forbidding land. Unless you are an Arab and you're raised in that environment, know how to cross the desert on camels, boy, that is just a really, really tough place for a Westerner. So he was sort of beyond their reach and their grasp, especially when you had a British intelligence operative like Jack Philby, who was feeding MI6 information to Ibn Saud. The other aspect of his Wahhabist beliefs is that Ibn Saud was violently opposed to Jewish settlement in Palestine. Now, that was something that had been promised to the World Zionist Congress with the Balfour Declaration in 1917, which was actually preceded by a letter from the French foreign minister in 1916 to Nahum Sokolov, who was the successor to Theodore Herzl. And when the Brits got that letter from the French, the Brits are like, well, we're not going to let the French outdo us. And that led to the Balfour Declaration. But the Balfour Declaration was signed off on by the French, by Woodrow Wilson, the Americans, first privately and then publicly, the government of Italy, even the Vatican, Pope Benedict XV, who'd reversed the Vatican's policy from his predecessor, Pius X, who was very anti-Semitic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you Jews refuse to acknowledge our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, so we cannot acknowledge you.
Right.
Basically. Even the Japanese, who were the other ally in World War I, were okay with this idea of the creation of a national home for the Jews in Palestine. Now, there's some question about, did the Brits really mean it? There was some weasel language there, and a national home. It didn't say the
I realize
state,
that, but
still,
I still think that a national home is pretty specific.
And when you take that step further,
had
then
it just said a home,
right,
that would have been weaselly. But a national home, that means you become a nation.
And then it takes a step further with the San Remo Conference in 1920, which was held in Italy, which said, okay, we're going to give all of this land to the Jews for their home, which included all of what is now Jordan.
Yeah.
But then the League of Nations Charter in 1922 cut that off at the Jordan River, so reduced by 77%, but still everything west of the Jordan was supposed to be for the national home for the Jews. When it was finally voted on in 1947, it was cut up into the pre-1967 borders, which is almost indefensible. This was because in the 1930s, they started finding oil in Arabia, and lots of oil. And so suddenly the Brits, with the 1936 conference, and I'm forgetting the name of it, which was prompted by the Arab rebellion in 1936. The Arabs in Palestine rebelled against the British, who were administering the British mandate.
36 wasn't League of Nations; that was earlier, right?
No, the League of Nations was 1922.
Yes,
there was the Peel Commission. The Peel Commission in 1936 said that. Okay, well, we're going to have to look at things again because the Arabs are getting very angry and violent about this. That prompted the Zionists to start retaliating with terror attacks. A group called the Irgun, a terrorist organization, committing acts against Arabs and against the Brits. Then in 1939, there was the White Paper, which led to the Brits saying, "Yeah, there'll still be a national home for the Jews in Palestine, but we're not going to allow any more Jews to emigrate to Palestine." And so,
yeah, the reason I have a look on my face that I'm confused is I can't find the Peel Commission.
Yeah, that was
P-E-A-L?
P-E-E-L.
Oh, no wonder. No wonder I couldn't find it. I was spelling P-E-A-L-E.
Ah, okay. No, it was the Palestine Royal Commission, headed by Lord Peel, which was appointed in 1936.
Okay.
To find out why people were getting violent in
and
Palestine.
His husband.
Yeah. So while all of this was going on, Jack Philby, who'd become a trusted senior advisor of Ibn Saud, was working against the British government's official policy, which was to eventually establish a national home for the Jews in Palestine, and working out deals with oil men, both in Britain and the U.S., to develop the oil wealth, make Ibn Saud very wealthy, sell oil through Francisco Franco in Spain to Hitler in Germany, all the time working against the establishment of an independent Jewish state.
How are we doing in time?
We're probably at about the halfway mark. So,
well, let's take a break, because when we come back, I would like to discuss why this hasn't changed.
Good point.
This is all still the same.
We're seeing just a continuation of the long struggle for control of the land that God decreed as His.
And the recent NATO conference is involved.
More straight ahead on PID Radio.
Giants, gods, dragons, they're all real. We may not see them with our natural eyes, but their handiwork is evident in what's happening in the world around us, the spiritual warfare taking place.
It is so true. It's obvious in Israel, but worldwide. Historically, we've seen this happen. And we want you to get excited about the Old Testament and the New and the giants, gods, and dragons within it, because your kids need this information. So do you.
Yes. We're living in prophetic times. Help make sense of it with our special offer through July. Our book, Giants, Gods, and Dragons, which takes a fresh look at end times prophecy. My book's Bad Moon Rising, about the spiritual forces behind Islam. And Last Clash of the Titans, the overlap between what we were told is Greek mythology and the Bible. And our DVD, based on the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. All of this, an $80 value for just $45 plus shipping and handling, now through July, only at our online store, gilberthouse.org/store.
Hi friends, Pastor Mike Spaulding here to announce the Go Therefore 2024 conference. We will gather Friday and Saturday, July the 26th and 27th at Harvest Revival Center in Brookville, Ohio. This year we welcome the following scholars, Bible teachers, and researchers: Derek and Sharon Gilbert, Joe Horn, L.A. Marzulli, Dr. Judd Burton, Pastor Paul Begley, Pastor Carl Gallops, Dr. Greg Reed, Tom Dunn, and Dr. Sherry Tenpenny will be doing a book signing for her new book, Walking with God. Live stream is available. Ministry tables are available for like-minded ministries. Hotel and other information is on the conference website, www.gothereforeconference.com. GoThereforeConference.com. Looking forward to seeing you.
Welcome back to PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
And I'm the very confused Sharon Gilbert. I often am. Briefly, just want to remind everybody that I won't do like a 5-minute camel riding scene. And that Derek and I are leading a tour to Israel next spring. We might ride camels, but it won't be for, endless stretches and endless scenes through the desert. Yeah. It will be, at the very least, at the very most, maybe a quick ride up to a meal.
The Genesis land.
Yeah, if we go to Genesis land, that's where Derek and I rode them before.
If we stop at that one truck stop there at the turn.
The truck stop where Carl's
daughter-in-law got on the
exactly.
Camel. Yeah.
Oh, she was amazing. And we're like, is he, do we get her back?
Is Carl cutting a deal with the Bedouins?
He got on, he says, hey, I got a good deal for her. Like I got 5 shekels.
Yeah, tell Brandon Hannah's going to be a little late. So anyway, the latest information is at gilberthouse.org/travel. Somebody very astutely, very observantly pointed out that the link to the Lipkin Tours site that we had at our page had changed on the Lipkin Tours website. So that's been fixed. So now when you go, you click the link, it'll take you to the Lipkin Tours site. So you can reserve your spot for next spring's tour of Israel.
I got to tell you, that tour is going to be amazing. Assuming everything opens up the way it has been in the past, and that we're able to get to the archaeological sites up in the Golan, then we're going to be taking Timothy Alberino to places he's never been before.
Yeah.
Judd Burton is going to take us to Banyas, and he's going to tell us all about his experience there when he was digging there.
He was digging there, did his doctoral dissertation there.
Doug Van Dorn is going to explain everything he knows about the Gilgal Rephaim and other circles just like it.
The Serpent Mound of Bashan, which Doug gets credit for finding.
He does.
That will all be part of the tour. Rolling conference, really, through the Holy Land. And so sign up now. And again, the latest information, always at gilberthouse.org/travel.
Speaking of conferences and meetings, NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which was put together after World War II to make sure that World War never happened again in Europe. Well, NATO just had a meeting in Washington, which was, as you might guess, hilarious at times when Biden was speaking. Sad. We talked about that. But NATO has announced that they're going to place a regional office of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, in Jordan, in Amman. Why is a European anti-war? We're going to fight for one another. If ever one of our nations gets attacked, we'll all come over and defend you. That's Article 5 of that treaty. Why are they having a regional office open up in Jordan?
That's a really good question. Why Jordan? Why not, Tel Aviv, if not Jerusalem?
Remember, Jordan was key to whether or not Israel was going to get all of the land. Jordan is key to whether or not Israel has any rights on the Temple Mount. Jordan did not help Iran when Iran was flying missiles towards Israel.
That's true.
Just a couple of months ago.
Yeah, Jordan shot down a bunch of those drones.
They did, including the king's daughter.
Yeah.
She was in a plane shooting missiles down.
Abdullah's daughter up there shooting down drones.
Just like he was when he was a kid. So Jordan, where Petra is, and many prophecy scholars believe that Petra may be where those who are in Jerusalem at the time that the Antichrist declares himself God and are told to run by Jesus, warning in advance that they will run down to or be led down to, perhaps supernaturally, to Petra. Jordan is important in prophecy. A lot of Bible took place in Jordan. That's where Moses looked and saw into the promised land.
That's right.
That's where he is buried.
The plains of Moab.
Exactly. So the fact that NATO wants control of Jordan by putting an office there, what do you think?
I think it's really interesting. I think it has more to do, well, gosh, I don't know. Trying to detect the theopolitics behind. Yeah. Trying to discern the theopolitics behind the geopolitical move there.
That's what we try to do.
Yeah.
We're not always very good at it.
Why go to Jordan instead of to Israel? Likely because they just do not like Israel. When 1948 came around, the vote in the United Nations in 1947 was secured by David Ben-Gurion working behind the scenes with information collected by Jewish intelligence officers working inside the GRU, which was the Soviet Union's precursor to KGB, inside the OSS and later CIA, and inside MI6.
I'm sending you a link.
Okay.
It is the statement from NATO about this. And they say, quote, the office, NATO, acting as a representative office, this is the regional office that will be put together in Jordan, built or another building taken over, will bring NATO and Jordan closer by enhancing political dialogue and practical cooperation in areas of common interest between the alliance, that's NATO, and Jordan. It will enable regular engagement between NATO and the Jordanian authorities, thus contributing to a better shared understanding of the national and regional context and to the development and implementation of partnership programs and activities, including blah, blah, blah. Now, this has a subtext to me, and I may be misreading it, but it sounds like, thanks a lot, Abdullah. We'll just be putting our office here and telling you what to do.
There is a strategic aspect of this as it puts them closer to
controlling the
Syria.
Temple Mount.
Well, yeah, controlling the Temple Mount, but also closer to Syria and to Iran on the east, or Iraq anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, gosh, I just don't. I'm a little puzzled as to the benefit to NATO here. Jordan obviously benefits from any strategic partnership it can reach with a wealthier Western nation. Jordan is one of the most impoverished and water poor nations on earth.
So you can't really blame the king for
no.
And here's the thing: there's nothing in this document that I sent you. Nothing here that suggests or reveals what promises were made in exchange for this territory grab.
Yeah.
It's very possible, as you say, that Jordan has been promised material for defense of the country or for water. Somehow that they're going to give them water. I don't know how that could, but also just money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As you say, Jordan is dirt poor.
Yeah.
They're sand poor.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful place. The city of Amman is quite beautiful.
It is a beautiful place.
And very interesting. We visited the citadel of Amman, which would have been the center of the ancient city of Rabbah of the Ammonites.
And it's the high place of the area.
The high place of the area, which was the temple to, they think, Hercules, but I think more likely Saturn, because it was on top of a temple to Milcom, who is Molech, El of the Canaanites. That was very interesting to visit. So, yeah, again, why would NATO be there? Well, NATO's got a base on the top of Mount Hermon. Maybe, looking at the theopolitical aspect here, maybe it's the El/Molech connection.
Well, that is entirely possible. Looking at the PID radio, job that we look at the spirits and not just the humans.
And the foil hats we wear, so you don't have to.
Exactly. We've even got foil hats for our dogs. We really did back in the day. We should make some new ones. But if NATO is trying to make a grab, prophetically speaking, this is big.
Mm-hmm.
Capital B, capital I, capital G, big.
Mm-hmm.
Because it, seriously, and the king is, I really appreciate him because he doesn't let people tell him what to do. But when there's money involved and an heir who is threatened, and I'll explain that in a second, then he might be more amenable to making a deal. Abdullah's son is his heir apparent. However, his half-brother, if I remember it correctly, through the American mother, who was Queen Noor, I think, she wants her son to be the next king.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't always go to the one who is selected by the previous king. Sometimes it just goes to the strong man.
Yeah, and that's not atypical. That's not unusual for Arab societies. And what we found to be very interesting as we were looking up some of the trivia connected to the movie, coming back to Lawrence of Arabia.
Yes, circling
was that
back.
Abdullah II, current king of Jordan, is the son of King Hussein of Jordan, who met his wife, who was a British lady who was working on the crew for the film Lawrence of Arabia.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. So King Hussein was taken with this young lady and married her, and King Abdullah was born in 1962, actually just a few weeks after me.
Yeah, I'm trying to, well, how about that?
Yeah. So anyway,
you and
there's
Abdullah
that.
don't look anything alike.
No, that's true. We don't. Well, I'm not a.
He's
not
getting
a
white in his beard too.
Yeah. But coming back to NATO, yeah, the Jordanian connection and that connection in the Middle East is interesting. Again, NATO. I'm sorry, NATO. It's not NATO's got a base on Mount Hermon. That's United Nations.
It's the United Nations,
my
exactly.
Mistake, my
no,
mistake.
They do work together though. Now, here's the thing. A few weeks ago, I read this story, and it's a BBC News. In fact, let me just check on the date for you. No, sorry. This actually goes back a few years. But it was in my head, which in my head, it's a few weeks ago. His half-brother is an older brother.
Mm-hmm.
His name is Prince Hamza. He is the oldest son of the late King Hussein and his fourth wife, American-born Queen Noor. Prince Hamza is a graduate, and it goes on and explains how he was named the crown prince in 1999 and was King Hussein's favorite. Often described in public as, quote, the delight of my eye. However, he was too young and inexperienced to be named successor at the time of Hussein's death.
Right, and because King Abdullah was 37 at the time?
Instead, his older half-brother, King Abdullah, ascended to the throne and stripped Hamza of the title of Crown Prince in 2004, giving it to his own son.
Okay.
On 29 November 2004, Prince Hamza replied to the king's decision with a letter reading, "I obey the command of my elder brother out of my loyalty, love, and obedience. I promise you that I shall always be up to your expectations and confidence in me as a Hashemite Muslim." Now, this really upset Queen Noor, as you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
So there are stories that this tension goes on today.
Yeah.
That the royal ruckus that is now breaking out, Queen Noor, who is now 69, had been posting to X, formerly Twitter, saying in 2021, praying that truth and justice will prevail for all the innocent victims of this wicked slander. God bless and keep them safe. Not sure what she meant by that. So you can cut that part out.
Well,
but the bottom line is that there are those who would love to take Abdullah's throne away from him.
Not least of which being the mullahs or the ayatollahs in Iran.
Absolutely. And they just elected a brand new president who's all in favor of doing whatever the mullahs say to do.
Yeah, they call him a moderate.
He says he wants to make peace with all the nations except Israel. He literally said except Israel.
Yeah.
He said that quiet part out loud.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the only reason he got elected and was approved for the election itself is because he met with the stamp of approval of Ayatollah Khamenei.
Can you imagine any country having to have a select group of individuals approve a candidate for a high office like that?
Well, here in the West, it's reported like it's no big deal. Oh, the donor class having meetings to decide who should replace President Biden as the Democratic.
We don't have mullahs. We have a donor class.
Wait a minute. I thought the Democrats just had primary elections to elect, and President Biden won with an overwhelming percentage. And now we're telling voters.
Just change their name to the donor party. Oh, wait, that's got bad connotations too.
Yeah.
Donor party.
Well, that really applies to both parties.
Come to the donor party lunch.
Yeah. Nom. Well, NATO's also has some other very interesting things going on here. And by the way, coming back to my earlier error
Circling back.
The Mount Herman to Amman connection with NATO.
And you were all shouting, we know, because that's what we do too.
It's the UN, it's not NATO.
Yeah, we
it's
do
another acronym. But the fact is that entity whose power was who claimed those mountains, like because again the citadel in Amman is on one of the hills of Amman, one of the highest hills.
Exactly.
And then we got that neat archaeology museum there on that hill right next to that ancient temple site, Temple of Milcom.
We're going to go back there, I think.
I certainly hope so. The entity called El by the Canaanites, Milcom, which is just a way of, in the Ammonite language, it just means king.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the Hebrews twisted it into Molech, who was the entity in the netherworld who demanded child sacrifice. El was, in the Canaanite religion, believed to live at the source of the two deeps, the double deep. So Mount Hermon, the citadel in Amman, Jordan. He also had high places at Carmel, at Beth El, and he was also the patron deity called Dagon in the Philistine territories of Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod. That entity is driving a lot of what happens in this world today. I mean, child sacrifice, the number one cause of death worldwide for the last 4 years that I know of, probably longer than that, but at least the last 4 years for which we can get statistics, is the termination of unborn children.
Mm-hmm.
So this entity, even though according to Peter, he's locked up in the netherworld, in chains in gloomy darkness. Yes, his minions,
his kids,
the spirits of the giants destroyed in the flood, his kids, still loyal to him and still stirring things up. Doctrines of demons, Paul meant that literally. They're whispering to people all over the world. So, yeah, NATO getting its hooks into Amman, Jordan, who knows? Maybe that is connected to that somehow. But NATO is getting back into the geopolitical realm, appears to be just bound and determined to poke the bear into something really bad happening, because the other news releases that came out of the NATO summit, the 75th, where President Biden called Vladimir Zelensky, President Putin.
Yeah, introduced him as Putin.
Gee whiz. They announced that the missile defense base in Poland is now mission ready. They signed an airworthiness agreement with the Republic of Korea, South Korea. They've signed a memorandum of understanding with Japan. Essentially, NATO is trying to create NATO Pacific to counter China. NATO is trying to expand beyond the North Atlantic.
They want to become the world.
Yeah. It's another globalist organization that wants to become the world.
But let me tell you, that is extremely dangerous. I'll say again, Article 5, which is the whole purpose of the organization and the treaty, is that if one of the signees is invaded, has to go to military action, the others who have signed will defend that country.
Yep.
And Ukraine is in the middle of a war. How can you possibly admit Ukraine into NATO when they're already at war? Well,
that was the other thing. They declared that NATO was now on an irreversible path to membership in NATO. Even though it was reported just 2 weeks ago, NATO was telling Ukraine that they had to clean up the corruption because Ukraine was too corrupt to admit into NATO.
When you say that, when you make it, and that is a quote, irreversible path.
Yeah.
By saying that, NATO has essentially said, okay, they're not officially a member, but as far as we're concerned, they are.
Yeah.
Because the term irreversible means that they intend to do it.
And as part of this, they've announced, NATO that is, has announced a new military command based at Wiesbaden, Germany, to coordinate donations of military hardware and training on how to use that hardware to Ukraine. While at the same time, Poland and Ukraine have signed a new military agreement where Poland will train a volunteer, put that in air quotes, a volunteer Ukrainian legion to be trained and equipped. And according to Zelensky, the equipment for the Ukrainian legion will be donated by its partners. Well, who are the partners? NATO. But Jens Stoltenberg, the Secretary General, is saying, well, this doesn't mean that NATO is an active participant in the war. Well, yeah, it is. I mean, from the Russian standpoint, even from here as an American, I'm looking and saying, look, you're training their soldiers on Polish soil. You've been gifting them F-16s and HIMARS and other weapons, anti-tank missiles and other things. Ukrainian soldiers are being trained here in the United States. You're doing everything but sending, oh, wait, we do have military advisors on the ground in Brits and America. How is this not taking an active role? They are slowly but surely turning up the temperature in the boiling pot by degrees, but they are slow walking us into World War III.
I agree with that. I really do. And I think that's why they want an office in Jordan, because the Middle East is the heart of it all.
It'll become another front.
Is the heart of it all.
Yeah. Yeah. Just as the pandemic was intended to frighten the world into compliance with certain dictates, a military conflict that involves nuclear-armed powers. And oh, by the way, the Chinese are having military exercise with the army of Belarus on the Polish border.
Yes. Yes, China and Russia, very close to one another. They're both founding members of BRICS.
Yep.
Belarus is all in Putin's camp, has been for a long, long time. And Belarus is right there on the border with Lithuania, I think.
Lithuania, but also Ukraine.
Yes.
Those military exercises, which continue through this coming Friday.
Yes, but the reason I bring up Lithuania is because that could also be involved in this, because they have a pass-through region that is Russian.
That's right.
It's one of those territories that Russia claims.
Yeah, there's a little enclave that's west of Lithuania, and there's like a corridor that the Russians can use to get through without having to cross Lithuanian soil. Yeah, the area where the military exercises are taking place is only 40 miles from the Ukrainian border. So you've got Chinese troops on the ground right next to a hot war zone. China and Russia, I just learned this morning, having naval exercises off the south coast of China, close to Taiwan. So yeah, things are, as the Brits would say, hotting up.
Well, it reminds me, I've said this many, many other times, that it reminds me of the lead up to World War I.
Yep.
We see treaties taking place between various countries, and those treaties are, frankly, they're almost in opposition to one another, because if this, then that can occur so quickly, and suddenly all of these treaties, like dominoes, are put into effect, are triggered. And that's what happened in World War I. You had an archduke who was shot, and suddenly lots of treaties were being pulled out and examined, and people and politicians were asking, does this mean that we have to do X, Y, and Z? And the answer was, yes, we do. We have no choice. We signed a treaty.
Yeah.
And they ended up in a world war. I think we're going to end up in that. There's no doubt, if you look at Bible prophecy, that the world is about to go to one final war before the return of Christ. Do we worry? No. We are commanded to discern the spirits, which means looking at what they are and what they're doing. Derek and I like to see what they're doing. There are discernment ministries that look at who exactly they are, which we also look at, but they will help you, the discernment ministries and the those who specialize in aiding you with demonic possession, oppression, those ties to your family that have given permission to this entity or that entity. And I bring that up because when we are in Brookville, Ohio, at the end of this month, we're going to be with a whole bunch of those people. So if you need help with this, if you are worried about what's going on in the world, if you are starting to feel fearful, if entities you believe are starting to affect your children, your grandchildren, yourself, come to this. Come.
Yeah.
Come and talk to us.
Tom Dunn, Vicki Joy Anderson, I know, will be there as well. But it's something that Dr. Greg Reed,
for goodness sake,
basically
he's been doing this for years.
Yeah. So the Go Therefore Conference, July 26th and 27th. L.A. Marzulli, Dr. Judd Burton, Pastor Carl
Marzulli
Gallups.
also does this stuff. Carl Gallups, he knows the stuff.
Pastor Paul Begley. Yeah.
Paul.
So this will be a wonderful gathering. Dr. Sherry Tenpenny will be there too.
She can help you with physical stuff and spiritual, but there will be a lot of people there who specialize, if you want to put it that way. Their calling is to help with that aspect of the spiritual war.
Right. So information on that. If you can't be there, you can watch the streaming video, but being there and being able to talk directly one-on-one with folks, that's one of the things we really appreciate about physical conferences.
Absolutely.
We spend a lot of time at our table and talk with as many people as we can, just because we know that that's what a lot of people need.
Yeah.
And why you go to conferences. But first of all, to realize that you're not crazy.
Well, we've learned we probably are, but
in a good way. But it is edifying and encouraging to get together with like-minded believers. And again, if you've got specific needs at this conference, especially with Greg, Tom, Vicki,
Judd Burton,
Joe Artis Horn.
Yeah, Joe, he can also deal with a lot of the physical aspects.
Right.
He can talk to you about nutrition as well as Dr. Tenpenny.
Yeah.
So between those two, good grief.
So you get, and in fact, when you sign up for the conference, you get access to the videos from the 2021 and 2022 conferences. So that is quite a blessing. All the information is available at gothereforeconference.com. In September, I'll be going to the Pitchfork and Hoe gathering. Yeah, that'll be at Valley City, North Dakota, the Eagles Club there. Wonderful facility. It's sort of like a conference for small, like homesteaders and small farmers, best practices sort of thing. And then one crazy guy preaching about giants, gods, and dragons from the Bible.
I love that this group up there, they really want to know. They want to learn.
Yeah. In fact, I got a couple of text messages from Wyatt Furno, who coordinated it last year, and they've invited me back, so I'll be up there September 6th and 7th, and hope they moved it earlier this year because last year was late October around your birthday, and they had an ice storm.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, snowstorm. So this year they're hoping for better weather.
Well, we'll pray the weather is good in October, early October. I'm going to be speaking. Derek's going to be with me, at the Women's Conference in Idaho Falls.
Ignite Your Fire. And Heidi Begley, Tracy Tennant will be there. And we just learned Vicki Joy Anderson's just been added to the speakers list.
Yep. So if you live in the area, if you're up north somewhere, think about going to the Pitchfork and Hoe gathering in North Dakota. And if you do live anywhere close to Idaho Falls, that is going to be an extremely wonderful conference. You can go to hearthewatchman.com. All the information is there. It will take you to the Eventbrite page where you can sign up for the conference. But also there's an extra on Sunday. Sunday for an extra ticket, and you'll see the extra purchase for that. There's purchase the tickets for the conference, and there's purchase the tickets for the motor coach transport tour of, it's deluxe motor coach, by the way.
Oh.
Deluxe. Tour of Yellowstone.
Oh, wow.
I have never been to Yellowstone. I think maybe Life Unlimited went there when we were traveling up in that way back in 1980. But I can't remember if we did. If we did, it was just such a quick run in, run out. I don't remember it, so I don't think we went
Well,
there.
I know I've never been there. Never been in the state of Wyoming. So looking forward to that. That will be a wonderful gathering. And again, some wonderful speakers between you, Tracy, Vicki Joy Anderson, and the other Heidi Begley.
It should be a beautiful time of year to be there because early October, especially up there, is going to be cool enough that you're going to want a jacket.
Yes. Speaking of cool enough to want a jacket, the Christmas in Branson Prophecy Conference from Prophecy Watchers. I've just been invited to speak at that, and we are looking forward to this gathering because Prophecy Watchers, they always put on a wonderful conference, but this one at the Chateau on the Lake.
That hotel is gorgeous.
Yeah, Skywatch TV had our Christmas party there a few years ago.
Yeah, we did.
And it is an absolutely gorgeous facility, gorgeous setting. And the speaker list, my goodness, L.A. Marzulli, Bill Salas, Billy Crone, Dr. Ken Johnson, Patrick Wood, the author of Technocracy Rising. Really want to hear him speak. Doug Hershey, of course, Mondo Gonzalez and Josh Peck now with Prophecy Watchers. Brandon Holthouse. He is a pastor out on the West Coast who I actually heard speaking about the Apkallu in one of his sermons.
Oh.
So,
whoa.
Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis, Doug Hershey. We haven't seen him in a while.
No, we haven't.
Look forward to connecting with him and catching up with him. So many other speakers. Terry James will be there as well. You can find out more at, let's see, you can get there from prophecywatchers.com, but they've got a separate website for this conference, Branson Christmas Prophecy Conference.com, or better yet, just go to our
prophecy in the name.
Prophecy Watchers.
Just go to prophecywatchers.com.
Or go to our website. Go to gilberthouse.org and look at the...
why go off our site? It's right there in the app, in the calendar.
That's right. And you can follow the link there. It'll take you right to the website. So don't miss that one. That will be fantastic.
And now the question.
The question. Thank you to...
and the question, of course, is, are you guys ever going to quit? Are you ever going to shut up?
This is from Linda, who left a question in the app. Again, gilberthouse.org/app, pidradio.com/app. Lately, I've been seeing a rise of unusually talented musicians. I mean, unusually so that their talent is unmatched. Dimash, a young man who sings, can span 8 octaves without effort. I'd want to see that because I'm not sure the human voice is physically capable.
That's the entire piano keyboard. I just don't think that that's even humanly possible.
No, I mean, even those Russian, what do they call them, stroh basses?
Yeah.
I don't think they even get down far to the left end of the keyboard.
Yeah, I don't think they do either. I remember that there was a singer from South America whose name I can't remember. My voice teacher used to refer to her all the time.
Yeah. I watched a video of that young man, and he does have quite an amazing range on the high end. Mm-hmm. And there are some who are gifted with that ability. But
is it raining?
It sure sounds like it, doesn't it? Either that or we're being pelted by June bugs, one or the other. Anyway, he does have quite a range. There's another, she mentions, Marcin, a young Polish guitarist whose talent by the age of 8 was beyond any educator. This is 2 among many, all of them under the age of 30. In the back of my mind, I keep wondering about the wonders of the Nephilim. What if these kids are Nephilim?
Well, let me just go back to the voice thing. When you search for the longest vocal range in the world, mm-hmm. there is someone who claims to have a 10-octave range.
Okay.
Saying that parts of the range can only be heard by animals.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Tim Storms is the name of the person. Axl Rose has a vocal range of 6 octaves, allegedly.
Yeah, Dimash Kudaibergen claims a capacity of 6 octaves and 2 semitones.
Yeah, this says 7 octaves minus 1 full note. Yeah.
Mariah Carey claims a 7-octave range.
Yeah. It all depends on how you define those octaves. But the bottom line is, as you were about to say, that when you ask, are these Nephilim?
Mm-hmm.
No. I would say no, because historically, there have been a lot of individuals who are born with a savant-level musical ability.
Mm-hmm.
There are savants in mathematics, in physics, in English, in literature. There are people who are born and it too can play Mozart. That does not mean that there is non-human genetic material in their DNA.
Mm-hmm.
It means that they are simply unusually gifted. The Lord gives gifts to each one of us, and it is our responsibility to use those gifts for Him.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are spiritual gifts, some of them are material gifts. I would say that the music ability, that is a material gift. You said yesterday when we were talking about this that one of the reasons it may seem like there are so many more now is because of the internet.
Right.
Back in the day, someone living here had no idea what was going on in, say, Indonesia.
Mm-hmm. But now everybody with a video phone and an internet connection can start posting videos to YouTube or TikTok. And so we are now aware of it, just as we are more aware of conflicts in places like Gaza and Yemen than we would have been even 30 years ago.
Exactly.
When we had, because we don't have the access, that instant access to the internet that everybody has today. So, no, I think there've always been, as you say, savants, people who have unusual gifts that usually result in deficiencies in other areas.
Mm-hmm.
I know it was a fictional depiction, but the movie Amadeus about Mozart probably exaggerated his eccentricities.
I don't know that they did. Mozart was really, really, quote unquote, eccentric. And part of that is because he was treated like gold.
Yeah.
From the time he was 2 years old.
Mm-hmm. But I think there are people who are gifted, especially in one area. I think it's like a video game where you get so many points that you can spend on different skills, speed, agility, wisdom, whatever. And if you're more gifted in one area, you probably are not as strong in another area,
that's very
like
true.
Social skills or confidence or what have you. So,
But the other part of the question, and it's a legitimate question, I'm so glad you asked it. So again, those questions that you ask in our app, there are no stupid questions.
Nope.
We're happy to address any of them.
Right.
And I don't always write back because sometimes, as you're understanding right now, it's a 5-minute scene with guys riding camels through the desert before you're going to get the answer. But when someone starts to look at individuals throughout the world or any other individual and make judgments that diminish humanity, it's dangerous, because it means that I get to choose whether or not you are worthy of salvation.
Right. That line of thinking can lead to justifying acts of violence against people.
Right. Now, I suspect that Linda asked this not so much that she's trying to be judgmental. No. I don't think that at all, Linda. I think that you've asked it simply because you're concerned about an incursion.
Sure.
I don't know that is anything that we're to worry about. We have a great commission, and that is to preach the gospel to the ends of the earth, to love the Lord with all our hearts, souls, and minds, to love others as we love ourselves, which means that because we long for salvation, we long for the return of Christ, we need to love others and help them to know about Christ so that they too will be saved. They too will be part of His kingdom.
Yeah.
That is loving others as we love ourselves.
Yeah, and there can be a spirit of fear that grows out of that sort of thing, too.
Mm-hmm.
You see somebody who's unusually gifted, whether it's, say, Shohei Ohtani, who's this Japanese baseball player who's a top-line pitcher, but also is leading the league in home runs.
Yeah.
He's like a modern-day Babe Ruth. Well, maybe he's one of them. You see somebody who's an
or maybe
unusually
he just
gifted.
Practices a lot.
Yeah, and has got unusually good eye-hand coordination.
Mm-hmm.
Or you see somebody who's an unusually gifted orator, or somebody who's really good at home construction. We can start down that path.
Our dogs are really good at barking.
Yeah, maybe they're
unusually good.
Woofalim. Not to make light of this, but I think there's also some reason to think that the spirit realm, looking at what happened to the pre-flood fallen angels, the Watcher class angels who have been confined to Tartarus in chains, and think, I don't think I want to suffer that punishment, so I'm not going to do that, because that's clearly a red line for Yahweh.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to do that. So there is reason to think that they would be deterred from making that mistake, committing that sin again.
Right.
Doesn't mean it hasn't happened.
No, it doesn't.
We don't know for sure. But I think your advice is right. Let's focus on the Great Commission. Make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, which is a declaration of victory over those spirits.
Amen to that.
Who are confined in the abyss.
Amen to that. And thank you again, Linda, for that question. It was a very, very good question. And anyone who wants to ask a question on that app, we encourage you, whatever the question is.
Mm-hmm.
If we can't answer it, it's very likely that someone else on the app can.
Yeah.
And I've seen that many, many times.
Right.
That another person comes in and says, well, this is what I've found, or this is what I've learned.
And point to other resources.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know everything.
No.
But there are a lot of other ministries out there, discernment ministries, apologetics ministries, teaching ministries that have a lot of resources available out there. So if we can share those with one another, we make each other stronger.
And because Derek and I are so busy producing programs, researching our own, we're hoeing our own row, so to speak, that if it's not something that's in our experience, it's very likely someone in a nearby row that we just aren't aware of is doing that.
Right.
So we appreciate that you guys are jumping in there and helping one another to learn, but more than that, praying for one another, praising one another, praising Jesus regarding the miracles in your lives. The prayer and praise aspect of our lives, it gets neglected.
Mm-hmm.
But if you really attend to praising and praying, you'll find that fear part starts to go away.
Amen to that. Amen. Well, tomorrow we've got the Gilbert House Fellowship, our Bible study, as we continue through the book of Proverbs. Tomorrow evening on A View from the Bunker, it is Pastor Mike Hoggard.
Ah, wonderful.
Explaining why a Baptist preacher has got a website with the address ufopastor.com.
I know. I love that because you and I have researched that a bit, but he's really, really digging in and doing the research. So good on it. Yep. Good on him.
Oh, by the way, Tuesday, we didn't really talk about this when I went out to Dallas for this, but about 6 weeks ago, I went to Dallas and was interviewed by Joni Lamb.
Yes.
On Daystar for her program, Joni Table Talk. That episode with Jimmy Evans will be broadcast this coming Tuesday, July 16th.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Jimmy had me on his program to talk about the second coming of Saturn, and so he recommended to the folks there at Daystar that they have me come out to talk about that. They've talked about having the two of us come out later because I was talking about... you want to talk about the genetics of the Nephilim? You need to get Sharon out there because that's really her area of expertise. But that'll be broadcast on Joni Table Talk on Daystar Tuesday, 6 a.m., 7:30 p.m., and 1 a.m. Central Time.
Great.
And so if you're interested, you can see that, but they'll also have that out on their YouTube channel afterward.
Oh, wonderful. Well, we hate to go, but in fact, I'm sure you're sitting there going, look, I've watched you in the desert long enough.
Indeed. So until next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and for Grace and Glory, who are redecorating the house. Bye-bye, everybody.
PID Radio is produced by Gilbert House and released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, Twitter @PID Radio, or the PID Radio page at Facebook. Join us each week for our online Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, online at gilberthouse.org.